This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, folks, can you confirm if I am audible to all of you? Just put a message in the chat. Perfect. Okay, so let's get started. Yeah, last time we discussed OOPS concepts. We covered a little more UML diagram, and mainly last class focused on event handling. We talked about observer pattern, inner class, and anonymous class. So today I'm going to assume like people are pretty clear with what are inner classes, what are anonymous classes, and how do we write event handlers. So based on this assumption, we'll move forward. So today's agenda will be, we'll focus on getters and setters, what they are in a class. We'll talk about polymorphism in little detail. Then we will talk about these concepts to any project development. Then we'll introduce Netbeans and we'll eventually come to our case study, which is mini pen design, right? So if I go to getters and setters are nothing but they are functions, but they are functions to getters and setters are functions to give access to private fields. It is recommended that fields in the class should be kept as private. So imagine if I design a class called class student, and here if I say that string name, now it is typically recommended that you should have name declared as private, and let me say being 0 Java. Okay. Yeah, so we are writing a student class where we are giving one field, and we are writing another class which is public class, and this class will actually create object of student class. So your main function will be there in this public static void main string args. We'll follow this convention also, throws exception. We will start putting this. If you are not clear why we are doing that, you need to revise your concepts about what are checked exceptions. So if we call any function in main which throws an exception, and exception is checked exception. So checked exceptions are the one which must be handled or declared. So if I do not put this, if any function I call throws exception, I'll have to put try catch. But if I put this statement throws exception, then it is like I'm declaring I know there is a checked exception being thrown, but I do not want to put try and catch. So these two things, one of these two things must be done. So I prefer putting throws here. Okay, so now we declared student here. So one option that I have is I can create student s is equal to new student. And once we have created student, first of all, let me not make it private so that we can talk about the impact. So in student, I will have a function, let's say print intro. So about student, we'll print his introduction, and we will say system.out.printf. My name is %s/n. So we are going to print name of the student, right? Now, one option that I have, when we have this student class, I create object of student class. Since name is not having any access modifier, it will be treated as this access modifier is default. I can access student.name is equal to, let's say, being 0. And now when I have set the name, I can simply say s.print intro, and I'm calling the function. It should go and actually print the introduction. And let me put this name in single quotes so that we can see it clearly. Now I'll go ahead and compile this program, Java C being 0 OOP.java, and then I'll run this being 0 OOP, enter. So we see that this is printing name of the student. Now this is a simple program where we are directly able to access the members. The best practices say members should not be exposed. So ideally this member should not be exposed directly. Do not expose the members directly. It means it's hide this member, and hiding this member means giving two functions. First one is called getter public string get name. So this is a getter function. If I want to know student's name, I should be calling get name function. And if I want to set student's name, I should be using setter function. Set name, it will take string name, and inside we will say this dot name is equal to name. And get name will return me the simple name. So ideally, this is what is recommended. Make the fields private and provide getters and setters to access that. Now, earlier client program was directly accessing this. Now there is an error here. It says field is not visible. A private field of a class cannot be referenced directly by any other code which is creating object of the class. So now private fields are hidden from us. Now, if I have to get the name of the student or set the name of the student, I can do s dot set name. Now I'll have to use the setter being 0, and then if I do print intro, I'll be able to print the intro. And if I want to get the name, I will be able to. Earlier, I could have got the name with string n is equal to s dot name. Earlier model, when name was not private, I could have set like this and get like this. Now we have to use setter, and if we want to get the name string n, I can simply say s dot get name. Right. Now the main question that comes to our mind is, why have we complicated things? When this syntax was so straightforward, we did not require any keyword here. Why people prohibit, or why the best practices say that you should not expose the fields directly? Can somebody type in the chat window if you find you can give a reason why getters and setter is a better model than exposing these directly? There is a valid reason why we do this. Are you able to conclude or come to conclusion for that reason? Are you able to observe, or are you able to guess it? Even if you are guessing, that is perfectly okay. Can somebody tell? Yeah, I'll type my question clearly. Just to private field. Why it is preferable to have fields as private and make getters and setters for them. Why not directly make the field public or default? Okay, so I hear one thing from Nilima. Nilima says it is for data encapsulation. Yeah, so encapsulation, that is correct. That is a term, but with that, what you're saying is right, but it is again a cryptic answer. It is an answer which does not describe the necessity. Right. So how do you elaborate, or how do you describe to anybody which should be a convincing reason why this model is better and not the previous model? Because these kind of things get asked in interviews. That, can you tell me why getter and setter would be preferred? And that's where we feel like, I don't know the reason. Obviously, interviewer tries to explain you that says, hey, this model would have been better if I make it just default. You can directly access, directly set. Much cleaner, much easier syntax, but people complicate it. They put getters and setter, these two functions and a private field, these three things combined together. Okay, Pooja says because data should not be accessed by unauthorized users. But Pooja, if we go with that, let's kind of see. If this is public, we can get and set the data, right? If this field is public or default. But now you have given two functions which are public. Anybody, any other code will be able to call getter and setter, right? So is it like by providing getter and setter, we have controlled anything? Any code earlier which would have directly accessed name, now they will be directly able to use the functions. Do you agree with that, Pooja? Like for main function still has access to do whatever it was doing with the field. Now it has option to do that with getters and setters. For main function, there is no change. Main function is able to do its work, right? Then how do we say like this model is better? So your unauthorized users thing, Pooja, is not valid here, because if main function you are talking about is unauthorized, earlier it was directly accessing, now it is accessing through function. So we still have access. Okay, any answer from anyone? Okay, so let me give you a direction to think. Imagine if we created student class in our project and we kind of delivered it. Imagine student is a built-in class in Java. Okay, Satvika says object creation would be easier. So Satvika, object creation in both the cases was happening with this only. Student s is equal to new student, right? So previously also we were creating like that. Now also we are creating like this. We are talking about getters and setters and not and direct access. Okay, so imagine student is a built-in class in Java. So we are talking about, we code this class, we give it to others who can create objects of our class. If we are rolling out the class, Java version 1 had a student class where you can create any valid user. Okay, now that is in Java version 1. Now in Java version 2, we want to fix a bug, and that bug is anybody who is creating a student should not be able to create it with a blank name. Will we ever have a student whose name is empty? Yeah, folks, what do you think? Will we ever have a student who doesn't have a name? No, we will not have. But if we go with previous model where we do not give any access modifier, can any code create a user, create a student without having any name? Can they do this? Can they put an empty name? Question is that mainly. Yes, they can set an empty name. That is true. So we want to restrict that. Now, if we have given a setter function, now setter function we had exposed. So what enhancement we do to this is, in our class version 2, we say if name dot length is 0, throw new runtime exception, and you can say name cannot be empty. Now anybody who is trying to call set name with an empty name will get an exception. If you see that example, now if I go and say s dot set name, we give an empty name, empty string. Now if I go and run this code, it says runtime exception, name cannot be empty. I'm trying to do something invalid, right? So when you have getters and setters, can I say they provide us better control over field values validation? We can put our validation in getters and setter function, right? Somebody talked about access control. If you want to control the access to a field that unauthorized user should not be able to get the name, here you can put a check for authorization of current user. And if user has access, only then return the name, otherwise throw an exception. This user is not authorized to see the name. On websites, you will see some fields that, let's say username is given, mobile name is jumbled up. Because if you see a table and that table is talking about person's name, their mobile numbers, even Paytm does that. When you receive Paytm amount from someone, the person's mobile number is shown like this to you, right? So ideally that getter function has this logic. If somebody who is getting this mobile number, although mobile number is saved correctly in the database, but in getter we can put some logic before getting, we can say jumble phone number before returning. So that means you have got an option to do anything in the getter and setter. Earlier that control was not there. Now, because all other codes are calling getter function or setter function, now whatever you will put as in between logic, all that will keep you protected. So this is the encapsulation. This is the finer control that you are getting with getters and setters. So these reasons are something that we should keep in our mind, that what is the benefit that we are getting when we have getters and setters in picture. So is this making sense? Yeah. So this benefit would not have been there if function was not there. So ideally, in nutshell, in very simple language, if you ask, we can put our own logic before anyone gets or sets a field value. That is the final control that we get. So this is why people say If you have getters and setter, you will have better control over this. Okay, so that was about this. Second thing, let's talk about. So this code was for getters and setters. Let me do one thing. Let's put this code here because I'll be modifying this code quite often. So I do not want this to be lost. In case you need to refer back to it later, you can do that. So first topic we have talked about. Now let's briefly discuss polymorphism. So we'll discuss polymorphism and inheritance together. So let's say there is earlier we created student. Let me create as a user on website. So this is a website user who has username and yeah, so let me put that print intro for now. So we have a user and he has a function print intro. And what I'll do this time, I'll change something. I'll take username in constructor itself. Whenever somebody creates object of this user, then they will have to give the username. So yeah, public print intro. So we will say user u is equal to new user, and we will say admin. So this is our admin username, and I say u dot print intro. This should print my name is, my username is admin. Yeah, so let's, what did I miss? It should be username now because I have changed the field name. And let me set this username is equal to un. Let's go compile the code and let's go and run the code. My username is admin. Now, imagine there are two types of user on the site. One is just the guest user, another is the user which is a registered user. So I will define a new class registered user, but I do not want to repeat all the logic that is already there because registered user should also have a print intro function. So what should I do here? It's a new kind of user who has registered with us, and registered user will have certain extra fields. So yeah, so we should extend. So this is extending user. And now this class that we got, registered user, if I create a registered user object, two things to keep in mind. If I create a registered user object ru is equal to new registered user, and I give it a name, let's say author on the site. Now there is some error being given, and that says implicit constructor is undefined, because whenever you give an explicit constructor with some parameters, then default constructor is not added by Java. So ultimately here we should give this constructor again. So this is a new constructor we are giving. And here what we can do is we can call super with this un. So ultimately, if you see, I've defined a new constructor here, and here I'm just invoking the super class constructor so that it can access, it can modify this field's value, and super class constructor is doing that. Right now, if I want to add a field here, like string, or let me call it date of registration, when this user registered, that field is there with registered user, but that field is not there for derived class. This is extending the base class, so this is inheriting everything that is there in the base class. Right now, tell me, if I have created this, if I do ru dot print intro, what will it do? Will we be able to call this function on registered user? This class does not have that function. Tell me, is it legal syntax that we can call this function even though this class does not have that function? Is it okay? Can you respond? Yeah, it is okay. And why is it okay? Because this class is inheriting all the public and default fields of the superclass. So all the public fields, so public fields or functions, both these functions and this field is this field is default. Even this field will be accessible here if I want to say username is equal to empty, see, we are able to access the superclass field here because it is default. The moment I make it private, that will not be accessible here, because private is always local to the class, protected is available to the class and subclass, and if you give default, default is available to all the classes in the same package, and public is accessible everywhere. We'll do that summary also. So for now, let me get rid of this. So now, print intro is a function that we are inheriting from superclass. I want to change something here. I want to say when we have a registered user, this function should also print my username is this and I joined on this date. I registered on this date. We want to change this message for registered user. That means this function's output should be different. This function output should be different. Now, I cannot modify. I do not want to modify this because for normal user, the message should be my username is this. And for registered user, this message should change. So this is where we take the function, we copy it in the derived class, and what do we say? Here we can give a new implementation and say, and I registered on. For now, I'm skipping adding anything for date field, right? So just focus on the message so that we don't have to worry about date class. This field just keep in mind. So my name is this and I registered on this date. Now if I run this program, we will see two different methods. Sorry, two different messages. What is the error? Line number 3, there is an error. Okay, I think I accidentally deleted username. Yeah. So we compiled Java being 0 object-oriented programming. And if you see for first user, the message is different. For next user, the message is different. But if you just focus on the main function code, can I say I'm calling the same function but on different objects, and both the times behavior is different? So when you are calling same function and its behavior differs depending on which object you are calling it on. If you call on user, the same function, result is different. If you call on registered user, answer is different. So function with same name but behaving differently at runtime depending on which object you created. What is this thing called? What is this concept called? Yeah, this concept is called overriding. Chetna, to correct you, it is not overloading, it is overriding. So we will differentiate between these two now, overriding and overloading. Let's see what these concepts are. So overriding means a function with same name in superclass and derived class. So function is with the same name, same signature also. Such thing is called overriding. You have changed the behavior of function. When you change the behavior of a function, you are overriding, you are overruling, you are saying, hey, I'm overriding you, I'm taking control over you, I will be preferred. Right? So this is overriding a function with the same name, but this function, one exists in superclass, another exists in derived class, and pay attention to what I'm saying is it's same name, same signature, and they both are in different classes. One is in superclass, one is in derived class. In such concept, you will say we are overriding the function, because you override things when somebody is taking control of your class. Right? So imagine one example, non-technical example, if I have to give you, let's say Google acquired YouTube and it changed the way YouTube videos were published, were liked. So YouTube was a different company. Google bought that company. Now YouTube had some way of liking the video. When Google bought it, Google changed that way. The like button should be in a different way. It should be a thumbs up. So what Google did, Google actually inherited something and it modified that. So we will say it is overriding. So Google is taking control. It is saying that I want it this way. Then if you ask like what is overloading? Overloading is a function with same name. Now the difference will come. Different signatures, but in same class. Belonging to same class. Rather than in same class, I'll say belonging to same class will be called overloading. And overloading is nothing but giving another option in a function. So now if you keep these concepts in mind, one is the function with different signature but belonging to the same class. Another is function with same signature but belonging to super and subclass. So definition wise, we are clear what is overloading, what is overriding. Okay, so see, a dosa bandi that sells masala dosa now also started selling paneer dosa. This is overloading. Here giving one more choice to people. It's the same person who was making masala dosa earlier. Now he is also making paneer dosa. So this is one more option he's giving you. It's not that that dosa shop is bought by someone and he changed it, right? The acquisition course would have been overriding, but same person who is adding more options is overloading. So let's come back to this. Now tell me, this function print intro belongs here also, here also. What is this here in this example? What is this? Overloading or overriding? Yeah, folks, can you respond in the chat window? What is this? Print intro function is here also, here also. Is it overloading or overriding? Yeah, it is overriding because we are inheriting and modifying, right? Overloading would have been if I add same function public void print intro and I say print, let's say salutation also we are taking Mr. or Miss, and then how we will print the message. So now we say my name is %s, so it will be, we will call it Mr. Salutation, comma. Now I can call that function. I can say u dot print intro, and now I can say for this user we have to print it with Mr. So I'll go and compile the code. I'll go and run the code. Now you see my username is admin, my new username is Mr. Admin. So you see the difference. Now tell me, these two functions are belonging to the same class, but their signature is different. Name is same, but signature is different. This is taking one parameter, this is not taking any parameter. When I say function signature, it includes name of the function, input parameters, ideally it includes return type also. But when we are talking about overloading, if we just change return type, that is not acceptable. Ideally, when we are overloading the functions, in overloading, their parameters or their sequence should change. So can I say user class is having overloaded function for print intro? Will that be a valid statement? User class has overloaded function print intro. Now I want to ask you the same thing here. Can I say print intro is overloaded function in registered user class? Can you type your answer in the chat window? We are saying print intro is an overloaded function in registered user class. Do you agree with that? Can you type in your responses in the chat window? Print intro is overloaded function. Pooja says no. Rajita says no. Anybody who is saying yes? Okay, I'll ask you a different question. On registered user, here also can I call this function print intro with salutation? Answer this question. Can I do this? Will this be valid? Will this function work? Can you say yes or no? This call. It will work. So everybody is agreeing this will work. Why this will work? Because this function is being inherited, right? Now, if this function is inherited, it will not be wrong to say, from main function's perspective, it will not be wrong to say that registered user also has an overloaded function, because see, I'm able to call both the functions here. So why this statement is not true then? So this statement should also be true. Now let's go back what I said here. I said belonging to same class. It is not necessary that that has been declared in the same class. Belonging to means it can be inherited also. So it can be inherited function as well. Even if we are having an inherited function, and imagine this function was inherited, the normal one, I would have defined this here, then certainly I will say I'm overloading also. I'm overriding both things I'm doing at the same time. And if I'm defining this function in superclass, then also we should say that there is overloading as well as overriding. So this one class is an example of both. Do you all agree with me now? Now we have put some more light on the concept. Do you agree that registered user is both overloading as well as overriding? Overriding function is overridden function here. So keep this in mind, that overriding does not mean that function is defined in the same class. Inherited functions can also be overridden, right? So keep this thing in mind, that this is overriding, and overriding is also called as dynamic polymorphism, and this is called as static polymorphism. Why static? Because the two functions that you are talking about, they should be declared at compile time, and when you are calling those functions, see here we called this function with empty input, here we called with the salutation input, right? So at compile time, we should tell which function we are calling, because both the functions are having different signature. Then why do we say here this is a runtime invocation? Reason behind that is, I'll modify this. I'll say user RU is equal to new user, registered user. Is this valid? The highlighted line of syntax, is it okay if I write it user RU is equal to new registered user? Because what do you say? Yes, this is valid. Why this is valid? Because registered user is a user. There is a relationship. So we can say user RU is equal to registered user. But when you create RU, you can call only those functions which are there in superclass also. If this function was not there in superclass, if it was there in subclass, then you could not call that function, because that is not there in superclass, right? So let me put back. Right now we are overriding. Now the question is, this is also user, this is also user. When we print intro, now let me call it, yeah, okay, message already has registered. The question is, when we are calling this function, print intro function, can you tell me which function will this print intro call? User U is equal to new admin. Which print intro function will be called? Function number 1 or function number 2? Can you respond in the chat window? Which function user U is equal to new user will call? 1 or 2? Superclass or subclass? Yeah, it will call function number 1. Now, same question I want to ask you. What function will this call? So if our line is this, which function will be called by this line? It will call this function, which is superclass function, or it will call this function, which is subclass function, 1 or 2. Can you respond with your responses 1 or 2? Rasna says 1. Any other responses? Which function will it call? Superclass or subclass? Okay, I got one more response, two. So more responses I'm getting on two, and you are right. That is why it is called runtime polymorphism, because it says at runtime it depends on which object you are creating. Now, no book tells us what does this runtime mean and where we are creating this at runtime. Even this object is created at compile time. Do you agree that at compile time we have created this object, then we are running the program? How come this is runtime? So currently in our project, this is not a runtime. At runtime picture will come, and that is what I want to show you. In our mini paint application, where we will use polymorphism is this. This object that we are creating, actually runtime will decide which object we are creating. And what is that runtime? It will be dependent on user selection. We are giving a choice to the user, and based on that choice, we will be creating the object. So let's hear this concept clearly. In our mini paint application, user can select a shape out of line, rectangle, and third one was oval. User can select any shape. So what we will do in our mini paint application, we will have a shape class object S. It is not instantiated right now. What we will do in constructor, let's say this is our class mini paint. In mini paint window, which is the UI, this will contain a shape, and initially we will say by default shape we will keep as line, imagine. So mini paint S is equal to new line. So line will be a class we will define. So we have created a new line. Now if user selects another shape, what we should do? So let's say this is a function, handler function, run on user selection. So let's say user has selected some shape, and we will say if selection dot equals, if his selection is line, we will change it new line. Else if his selection is equals, let's say oval, we will create it as new oval. Else if last thing is anyways rectangle, so we'll create new rectangle, right? So this is what we will do on user selection. So now can you tell me, is object creation a runtime operation now or not? And that runtime is not something we are controlling, that is user's choice, whatever user wants to do with it. Do we all agree that now which object will this shape have? This will be decided by user's action, not by default we are creating this, but user has full control. At runtime, whatever user wants, he can decide that. Perfect. So now if user has selected any shape, if we say draw shape, now draw needs to happen, and draw function will simply say s dot draw. Each shape should have a draw function. Line should know how to draw itself. It will be on overridden function. Line will have its own override. Oval will have its own override. Rectangle will have its own override. And that is how our mini paint application will work. This is why polymorphism is dynamic, and based on which object we have instantiated, this function will behave according to that. So this function draw is actually dynamic polymorphism, call it runtime polymorphism. And all this is achieved through draw, which is a overloaded function or overridden function. Can you tell me what is draw function of any shape class? Draw is overriding or overloading? Please help me complete that. It is overloading or overriding? What do you feel? How will we design these classes? So it will be overriding, absolutely. And that overriding will look something like this. Books certainly teach you this example. They say there is a class called shape class, and then there will be three subclasses of it. You will say one is your line, one is your oval, inheriting from it, oval, and third one is actually rectangle. Shape class will give you draw function. This function is overridden by line because line drawing will be different. This drawing will be different. This drawing will be different. So once you override this function at 3 places, now at runtime, whichever object you are creating, that function will be called. That is what will be executing. So this makes sense. So keep this thing in mind whenever we want to give control to the user, whenever object creation changes at runtime, that is where this runtime polymorphism will be effective. I have to give you one more example, real world examples of polymorphism. One, we have talked about paint application where user selects a shape. Accordingly, the shape object is created, and that is what we play around with. Second is gaming applications which have a character, right? Character or optional, or we can say object. So imagine a car racing app, car racing game. If you are allowed to choose out of various cars options. So at runtime, you choose, they will give you multiple options. Which car do you want to race with? Blue color, Ferrari, red color, Audi. So we go and make the choices. The moment you make a choice, that is where software in the background is creating the new object. All the cars, different cars are kind of representing a hierarchy. So here it will be car. Here it will be like say nitrogen fuel car. Here it will be, let's say, normal car, right? Here it will be luxurious car. All these cars will have some functions overridden, which will be there in the superclass, right? The best example, if you ask me, Mario. In Mario, everyone has played that game, Mario or Super Mario. Can you respond in chat? Okay. So most people have played Mario, right? So Mario is a normal guy, but when normally it will be small. It will be visible as small character. But when it eats up that mushroom, it becomes bigger, right? Okay, my drawing is bad, but this will become bigger, right? So when it eats up mushroom, what actually happens at runtime, we are instantiating a new object. So this is Mario. This is big Mario. This is like after eating mushroom. So normally you will have object of this class. It will have a draw function. Draw function is showing you the small Mario. Same function will be overridden here. Once it eats mushroom at runtime, what software does? Software creates current Mario is equal to new big Mario. What happens when Mario eats a star? So there will be mushrooms in Mario game, right? And there will be star also in Mario game. What happens when it eats up a star? Do you remember in Mario game, there is a star also that Mario can eat. And after that, whichever character it collides with, that character gets killed. So there will be a collide function in Mario, and that function's behavior changes at runtime depending on whether it has eaten a star or whether it has eaten a mushroom. Make sense? So collide function's behavior also changes according to which Mario character we have instantiated. So this is one example. Mario is another example. Right? And when you start working in your job, in your company, third example I'll give you is runtime configuration files. So most of the software will have a configuration file where you can make changes at runtime, and changes are reflected immediately. So imagine we are using a software where we have kept some option, some setting. Let's say we are generating random numbers, and these random numbers are displayed on the screen. And displayed on screen. And what we want is, we want this to be writing to a file. So we can use a configuration file. Configuration file should have the destination. So generating random numbers with a configuration file that tells destination. Now, if you are writing random numbers on console, your function will be system.out.println. If you want to put it in a file, you will say, you will create a file, you will start using the file writing function, you will put it there. So basically, display function of random generator is changing. So you can say a normal random number generator, and then file random number generator, it will put things in file. It will put things in database random number generator. And third thing will be the console random number generator, right? Now, all of them will have generate n numbers function. Console will display it on the console. What this will do, it will generate and it will put that in the database. So now, after generating, it has extra logic to write to the database. After generating, it has logic to print on the console. After generating, it has logic to write it into the file. All three subclasses at runtime can make a decision. Now in configuration file, at runtime, you can go and make changes. You can specify one of these classes, that which random number you want. Based on that class, when you run the program, in program, your object will be created according to the setting you have given in the file. So it is similar to the previous example. And if you see when you run your project, it will read the configuration file, it will read your selection. If your selection says file, it will create random number generator is equal to new file random number generator. If it is database, it will say same object is equal to new database random number generator. Else it will say console random number generator. Now this object will be one of these three classes, and then when you have to generate random number, you will just say s.generate. Now behavior will change at runtime depending on which object you have created. The function of that class will be called. That's how the output will also change. Right here, user was making a selection in the UI. In this example, user is making a change in a configuration file which software can read and play from. So it does not require any UI. And this is what is used in most server softwares. Okay, so that should cover the polymorphism for us. Any questions? Vaishnavi is asking, can we also overload draw function to draw with fill color? Certainly, Vaishnavi, and that's a very good point that you are raising. We will do that in Minipaint. So Vaishnavi is raising a point. She's saying this draw function that you have in a shape, this draw function, imagine, will draw with a normal color. Can we override this function or overload this function with another parameter draw, and we can give a color to it? This function will draw with a color, and this function will draw with a default color. This will always be black. This is whatever color you give. So when you call these two functions, can you tell me, looking at these two signature, they are overloads or they are overrides of each other? Remember the concept of overriding, overloading? Yeah, this is overloading. And overloading, why we say it is overloading, you are adding more burden to it, you are adding more parameters to it. That is a simple way to keep it in our mind. So yeah, this is overload because the function signature actually changed. Yeah, Vaishnavi, very good point. Thanks for raising that. Yes, and this is something that we will require in our Minipaint also, because we want to draw default if user has not made any color selection, but the moment he does the color selection, we can go and change with a color. Same overload can be whether it is filled or not filled. You remember in Minipaint I showed you, we can draw a rectangle which just prints the boundary with a color. And second we can do is we can draw a filled rectangle. So even that can be overload. So here we can put another load with color and with true. True means it is filled. And false means it is not filled. And if you don't pass anything, this is by default. So here we will make the behavior as by default. Default, no fill. So there will be no filling, it will just print the boundary. Okay, so I hope this helps you understand the concept of polymorphism pretty comfortably, pretty easily, right? And honestly speaking, all these concepts I never learned in college, and all these are something that came from experience. When I started working, that is where I started realizing that, oh, this is where polymorphism gets applied. I did not know that back then in college. So industry, the experience that industry gives you, it's always applied. That's why I typically call these classes these are applied OOPs. They are not just OOPs concepts, because when we are taught in colleges, most of the times we study from the academic perspective, and academics has a different focus, but industry has the application focus, that whatever you have learned, can you apply that to build something, right? Okay, so that was the theory part for today. Rest all class will be interesting now, because we are going to do just hands-on, but this theory was required, and I believe whatever concepts we required in OOPS, we are done with that. The only thing is to kind of apply that and to see things in action, right? So before we move to the practical part, before we see something in action, any questions from anyone? Overloading, overriding, clear to everyone? Okay, so let me do one thing. Geeks for geeks. So there are some object-oriented questions in Geeks for Geeks MCQs. I'll put a link to that. Basically, now if you start answering them, you will be able to kind of get most of the questions correct if you have understood the concepts correctly. Not this. We are looking for MCQs. Let me put MCQ Java. So I'll put that link here for you. What concept? Java MCQs. OOPS concept. Set1. Set1 it should be, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, this is what I was searching for. So do you see anything here? Overloading, overriding, these are output. Yeah, this all should do. So let's copy this and put this in our. So you must try these questions. If I just have to validate, let me quickly see. Yeah. So if you see this concept, get data, long get data. These two functions, are they overloads of each other? Two functions belonging to same class, but different signature. Is it overloading? Yes, there is something we are missing here. I told you in overloading, you should be adding new parameters, or you should be changing order of parameters. That is not changing. Return type only is not sufficient for overloading. It will give you a compile time error, because these two functions, because reason it will get confused is when you call object.getData, looking at this call, can you differentiate which function you are intending to call? You are giving it in system.out.println object.getData. Can compiler know you are calling this function or this function? Because when you call a function, you pass the parameters to the function. So this will be actually a compilation error. Okay, this is not interactive. So it says the methods must have different signature, and that signature return type should be different. So that's why I'm saying these questions you must try. And yeah, these questions which are OOPS concepts question, these are more important because here they are interactive. Whatever answer you choose, they will immediately give you the explanation. I'm just picking random answers. If it is wrong, it will say go read this concept, you will learn it. Okay, so there is a question 554 is asking, sir, even if it is assigned to int, even then it is a compile time error? Yes, even then it is a compile time error. Reason it is a compile time error is because compiler cannot make out by the function call which function you are calling, right? Because when you are calling a function, you will give parameters. So it will be a compilation error. Ideally, two functions in the same class cannot be defined with the same name if just their return type is different. You will get a compilation error for that. Does that make sense? Roll number 554. Yeah. Yeah. So these questions will help you kind of revise your concepts. And let me add that thing also that we found. overloading two functions with same name and same parameters can't be overloads if just their return type is different. So it is mandatory that either parameter count should be different or their data type must be different or their order must be different. When I say that, int add int a comma int b, this function, and float add int a comma int b. Tell me, are they overloads of each other? Are these two functions overloads of each other? Yes or no? Absolutely, they are not overload of each other. But if I ask you, first one and third one, are they overload of each other? Yes, certainly, because now you have changed data type of one variable, right? And if I ask you one last thing, are they overloads of each other? Absolutely, they are also overloads of each other, because when you are making call, when you are calling this function add, now compiler can differentiate you are passing 3 or you are passing 2.0 versus second function you will call with 3.0, right? So when you give, and whenever you call a function, you will either give constants or you will give variables. And when you give variables, int a, b, and float c. Now see, if you call function add with ab, compiler knows which function you are calling. You are actually calling the first version of function. When you say add AC, it knows clearly you are calling int and float function. When you call with C and B, it knows you are calling third version. So function call should actually be differentiable for the compiler. That is where it will allow you to overload functions. Okay. So perfect. So we are going to apply polymorphism to our project because we will be using a shape, we'll be using rectangle, we'll be using oval. That is how we will go about it. Right. So now there are two parts in our project, and those two parts are, one is the UI of the project and second is the logic of the project. Right. So last time I talked about some concepts, heavyweight concepts, which was J frame, J button, a lot of UI controls are there. Now, if you have to create a UI on your own by writing code, it will become very cumbersome. You have to refer to a lot of classes, a lot of functions, a lot of documentation. And that is something that gets very simplified with Netbeans. So let's see, if we go to Netbeans. So Netbeans, you can download this IDE, Netbeans 8.2. I'll tell you why we are talking about this. Benefit of this is, this provides easy way to create UI, and it writes UI code for us, which will be such a big relief so that we can focus on our logic part. So I said two parts, UI and logic. So let me show you how. In Netbeans, we go to new project. Next. So ideally here there are multiple options. So I'll go with Java application. Next, I can call it my mini paint. I'll remove this. Don't create a main class. We'll add that ourselves. So I'm creating an empty project. It will go in this location, and this will be the folder where it gets created. So it's a base location with the project name. The moment I click this, it creates a directory structure for us. Mini paint, some source packages, some libraries. We go to source packages. We add our first Java class. Right click, new. We want to create a window. So there are multiple options. I can create a folder. I can create JFrame form, Java class, interface, package, panel, entity. What are we interested in from all these options? Can you guide me? What is it that we should choose? Because we want to create a mini paint UI. Which option seems most relevant to you? Options are in front of you. With whatever knowledge we gained so far, whatever two classes we did so far, which option should I choose? Can you make guesses? Don't worry that it is right or wrong. Okay. Yeah. So Java we will go with if it is a simple public class Java and it will have public static void main. We are interested in UI, and UI we discussed last time. It will be a JFrame form. So it will actually create a class for us. I will call it as paint main window. This is the name I'm giving, and I say finish. I'll see the beauty. This created direct a UI for us, and how this created this Am I audible clearly? Can you respond so that we can proceed and continue? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we were discussing that we have created a UI just by adding a form. And I said, whatever is unnecessary code, let's not focus on that. Let's see that main function is creating object of this paint main window class and making set visible true. And this class that we have, paint main window, this class has a function init components. That is where it might be generating some code for how it is creating the UI. Right now, UI is not our focus at all. So don't worry about what the UI code is. Our focus will be the logic that we will write. So I'm going back to the design tab. So we can switch between source tab and design tab. So this is the design tab I'm in. And our UI, as you know, should look like, it should have a window. On top, there should be menu. On bottom, there should be a status bar. In between, there should be a canvas where we can draw. So first of all, I'll show you if I right click this window and I say run file, it is showing a UI to us. So this is, without writing any code, we could create a form. Now this form that we are seeing, I can change its property. This JFrame provides getters and setters. I can right click and I can say properties. You see there is a title property here. I can give a title. I can say being 0 mini paint and say close. Now if I run my form again, you will see this form will have a title bar. And title bar will show this title that I have given. So this is the title it is showing that we had set. So we can play around with the properties here. Okay, now if I want, I can drag drop a menu. Right side, you see there's a palette where swing menus are there. So menu bar, menu, menu item. So three things. First of all, we drag a menu bar and it has a menu of file and edit. So left side, it is showing the overall layout. JFrame has a menu bar has a menu, and menu will have menu item. So all these are has a relationships. And has a relationship, if you go back in our JFrame form, whatever we have dragged, they are getting added as fields in our window. So we have added a menu bar. We have menu bar has a menu. So overall, there are three fields got added, right? And now we can quickly draw our UI. Then I can draw a toolbar. Right side, I will search. There should be some toolbar also. So let's see. Is the toolbar visible to you? It is here in swing containers. I can drag a toolbar and leave here. So this will be the toolbar where we can add our button, where we can add the combo box, the drop down. So we have, if you see, our UI is coming up pretty quickly without writing any code, right? So this is, so far this is the code. Menu is there, dummy menu. Imagine in file, if I want to add any menu, I can go to file, right click, and I can say add from palette, add a menu item. In file, I added a menu item. I can call this menu item anything. I can right click this, edit text. I can say this is open menu. And same way, it is just UI, drag drop, then we can run, so that we don't have to worry about the UI logic at all. So you see now file will have an open menu. Okay, so this is what so far we have got. Now we wanted something where we can draw. We wanted a panel where we can draw. So there is something called as panel. I'm dragging, dropping a panel here. This panel is something which will act as our drawing surface on which we will start drawing. And I'm leaving some space below so that we can show the mouse coordinates there. So I'll drag another panel for that, which we will make as our status bar. So this panel below will be our status bar. This panel above will be our drawing. And yeah, so this is the setting we have done so far. Just a rough UI we are trying to put. And now I want to differentiate my drawing panel. I want to change its background color to white. Can you guide me? What should I do with whatever exposure I gave you about this UI? What suggestion would you give me to change the background color of this panel? Anyone in chat window? What should we do? Let's do a right click. Let's go to properties. This will show me properties of this panel and which property I should change. Properties are in front of you. We have a background property, we have a foreground property. Shall I go to the background, click these triple dots and choose a color white? So we make it white, say okay, say close. You see our drawing surface became white. Right click, run file. You see, okay. So we see something coming as our paint window. This is where we will start drawing. Makes sense to everyone? That now the UI is not going to be our worry. UI we can build up quickly. Any kind of UI building will be easy. Netbeans is a good editor which provides you UI capabilities, drag and drop. In Eclipse, this thing is not built in if you use Eclipse for Java. In Eclipse, you have to install some separate plugins to do this. So Netbeans, if you can download, then making your UI for any project, not only mini paint, anything you want to build in Java, UI problem will be solved if you use this. Okay. So right now there is a glitch. This canvas is not growing. So for canvas to grow, you can drag drop. You can make it something like, ideally it should be tied to the borders so that it starts. For now, okay, let's not worry about the UI. Let's worry about the focus and OOPS concepts. So if I right click here and if I say run file, we are able to see a canvas where we can actually start drawing. Right now we need to learn little about drawing and the things here. And another thing is, whichever panel we had drawn here, we want to show our mouse coordinates. That was the small exercise I did last time with you. Let's drag a panel in this, and this panel we will show the mouse coordinates, right? So now whatever we have done so far here, let's try to identify what the components are. So this is our main window. Main window has a menu bar. Main window has a toolbar. Main window has a panel which is acting as status bar. Status bar has a label on top of it, and we have put a label. Sorry, we have put a panel for drawing. So this is a panel. This is toolbar, and all these are built-in classes in Java. This is the menu bar. This overall is JFrame. Here we have put a panel. On top of panel, we have put a label. So all these pieces, all these components are clear to us. Perfect. So next thing that we want to do is, whenever you move mouse on this panel, you want to display its coordinates in this label, right? So tell me, who is the event listener? Sorry, who is the event source for this, and what kind of event we want to handle? Two things you need to answer me. Who is the event source, and what kind of event we are interested in? First answer, can you give? Who is the event source in this entire thing? Yep, surface. Can we say this white surface, this white panel? Yep, drawing panel is our source. Correct. So this is source. And what kind of event we want to handle? Is it a click event? Are we doing something on click, or we are doing on something else? So what kind of event we want to handle? So I said, yeah, it is, Sirisha, it is not drag, it is mouse move. Because drag was when we press the mouse button and then move it, right? So see, Netbeans makes this also very easy. We can just go here, right click. This is a menu item which is for events. See, this has very well organized all the events. I can go to one of the event which is mouse motion, and there is an event called mouse drag, mouse moved. I want to go and click on this. It will directly give me a function that I can write. So I do not have to worry about the event handling concepts also. But reason I covered that for you, if you go and open the source code, you will understand if class concepts are clear. So I'll click this mouse moved. So it says you can directly write this function. In this function, I can write whatever logic I want to do, right? And if you look at JP mouse moved, JPanel mouse moved, ideally, if you see, it has written this code for us. Let me get this code out and show you what this code is, and tell me if that code makes sense to you. This is the panel, which is our drawing surface. It is saying that dot add mouse motion listener, and then it is using new mouse motion adapter. Adapter is actually a class. Last time we talked about mouse motion listener interface. This is a class. I'll tell you what is the difference between these two. So mouse motion listener is an interface. Mouse motion listener is an interface. This is an interface. This is implemented by a class, and that class is Okay, implementation may we put dotted lines. This is implemented by a class which is called mouse adapter. What this class does, this class gives, there are two functions here, move and drag, right? So both these functions are given in this class with empty body. They are overridden with empty body. Why it is done so? Because otherwise what would have happened if we implement this interface, we would have to give implementation of both the functions. So we have two choices, either implement this interface or inherit from this class. If you inherit from this class, empty body functions are already there. You want to change only move function, you can override move. You can leave the drag function as it is, right? And the syntax again is, earlier we wrote new interface round bracket. This is anonymous class syntax. And let me remove this to make things clearer. This is a class. This is our function, and these are input parameters. You just see, can I say we are overriding this function? This function is overridden from the class which we are inheriting from, which is mouse adapter. Is this syntax clear to everyone? This is something that we discussed in the last class, we covered in the last class. This is event handling, and this is using the anonymous class notation. If logic is making sense, what we are doing? Can you respond in the chat window? Perfect. Yeah, so this is event source. Source has an add function. In add function, we can give an object whose function we want to call, and this is the handler code. So this is the handler we have written. Now this is calling a function jpanel mouse moved, and that is the function we will be writing. If you come back to this, if we go back to design, right click, events, mouse motion, moved. This is the function it is asking us to write, and this function is being called from that code. So whatever we write here, that will work. The only thing you need to tell me is what logic do we want in this function? Whenever mouse moves on the panel, what do we want to achieve? We need to get mouse coordinates and do what with those coordinates? Yeah, folks, can you tell me what do we want to do with mouse coordinates that we get here? We want to display. Where do we want to display that, Vaishnavi? Where do we want to display that? We want to display that in UI. Where do we want to display? In the label, and this is the label. This label's variable name is JLabel1. So I can change the variable name also. I can say LBL mouse coordinates. I'm just changing the name of this variable in our code. Now this variable name will change if I go look at, or if I go directly and say LBL control space. This is the variable name set text. Label has a set text function. What we are doing, we are going to say string.format. We are giving a formatted string, and that format will be round bracket %d, comma %d, round bracket close, and I'll say evt.getx and comma evt.getY. Because this event that we are getting, mouse event object we are getting, it will give us x and y. So we are setting the text on this whenever mouse moves. Now this is the code last time we wrote directly in Notepad, and this time we are doing in Netbeans. So let's run this code. That's all we need. You just see when I'm moving the mouse, below coordinates are getting updated, right? So great. Now we want to draw any surface. So let's connect to one more piece. If I want to draw any surface here, what do I need? I need start coordinate and end coordinate. Do you agree with that? To draw a line, I need start XY and end XY. And that will be after dragging. So what I'll do right now, I'll go to the events, I'll go to mouse motion event, and this time I'll go to mouse dragged. So whenever, okay, mouse dragged, and one more thing I'll see. Whenever I go and I want to draw, I will first press mouse button down. Then when I release, I want the surface to be printed, right? So I'll go with my mouse release first. After dragging, we have to go to mouse release. So when mouse releases, I want to draw on the drawing surface. So this is where our drawing will complete. Whenever I start dragging, and then when I take mouse pointer up, when I take my finger up from the mouse, then the drawing should complete. So here we should learn how do we draw on a panel, because drawing surface is panel. Now this panel that we have, let me give some variable name to this. Right click, change variable name, call it PNL. PNL is for panel. I use this convention. First three letters will convey what kind of control it is. I'll say PNL drawing panel. This is the name we have given. Now if I go back to that event, mouse released. Here you see how do we draw on a panel. You can say PNL panel dot get graphics. Every panel will have a graphics object which will give us the surface of it, and this graphics object helps us draw. So this is a built-in class in Java. If I got access to this graphics object, let me say, what does it return? Let me see. So get graphics gives me a graphics object back, which is java x.swing. So for this I should do import statement should come. Yeah, just a moment. Graphics g is equal to this. Okay, if I click here, okay, now it says that you can import java.aw.graphics. Okay, I get the graphics object. Now this graphics object gives us all the functions. If I say g dot draw rectangle, see this is a built-in function. I will give it 4 parameters. The first parameter is x coordinate, then y coordinate, then width and height. For now, let me give some random. So x I give 10, y I give 10, and then 100 width, 100 height. So right now I'm just drawing hard coded. Later on we will see how to do it dynamic according to the user. And this I'm doing on mouse release. That means if I press mouse, I have pressed the mouse button, but I have not released yet. If I release it, immediately I'll see a rectangle. You see? So I got a rectangle with mouse press and release, because we have right now written the logic for press and release. Again, if I show you that event at mouse release, we are doing something. Go to mouse released, and at that something right now I just directly had drawn a rectangle. Then I can say dot draw. I can check other functions also. So draw oval. There is a draw oval function. What parameters does it need? So this takes xy. So I'm just checking the documentation here. X coordinate, y coordinate, and it takes width and height. So it takes a rectangular surface that will outline the oval. So ultimately the way oval is drawn is it asks you the coordinates of this rectangle xy and width and height, and it will draw the oval that fits into this rectangle. So for oval, what I do, I want to just try that also. So I'll say it should start at 100, 100, because it should not overlap with the rectangle. Then let's take its width and height also 100, 100. Let's see whether we are able to see the oval also. Run. Mouse pressed, released. Now we see oval and rectangle both printed. Similar way, you will agree there will be a draw line function also, which will do the work, right? So we got the basic understanding of drawing. Before this, there is a function called set color. Now, whatever color you give before calling that function, dot red, it will print in that color. So I'm changing the color also. Right click, run file. Now you see red. Now again, if I change in the code it to blue, then I should see the blue color objects, right? And all these we will connect to the runtime things. We will make it based on what user selects. So go here, press release. Now it is coming in blue color. So that means once we know panel and its drawing functions, then all we have to do is we have to connect all the things together and we have to complete our application, right? Now, today I'm going to leave things up to here so that you can grasp these concepts, you can digest these concepts. But with this much background, whatever we have talked about so far, you should be able to get started, starting putting the concepts together and started to make the mini paint application yourself, right? I mean, does everyone feel comfortable that, yeah, now I have enough knowledge that I can get started, I can give it a try to make this paint on my own? Can you respond in the chat window? Perfect. Okay, so I got only few responses. Okay, great. Yeah, so this is something that will require you to spend time. It will require you to download Netbeans. So Netbeans latest version is 11. I will suggest don't download that right now. So I will say download this version and start playing around with UI creation. You can build small applications also. You can build a simple calculator like we discussed last time. Okay, so sir, should we also do it in Netbeans if we have to do it? Yeah, if you do in Netbeans, you will not be wasting time in creating UI. So I will suggest doing that. I will say keep your time focused on writing the logic behind it, because logic, and you will be writing shape class, line class, rectangle class. Put your focus more on designing those classes, how the classes work together. UI is something not is focus of all these sessions. UI makes things interesting for us. That's why we are doing it with UI. And I covered all the concepts of UI earlier to you, so that when you open the source code, if you try to make sense out of few lines, they should not be confusing for you. So these things where add mouse motion listener, so these event handling concepts are covered for you. Yeah. So my recommendation would be do not waste time on the UI. Right. One last thing is there is a I'll show you one of the assignments from Princeton University. See, these are the kind of assignments that are given to students there. So in this assignment, what is told is, in Google, when you start typing, it does auto completion, right? So how to, when you're typing, all these suggestions come in Google. When you're typing a message, in the message, it gives you suggestion which word you are typing. When you type anything in the search bar of IMDb, it suggests which movie you are typing, and it is deciding based on what letters you have typed, right? So what this site is telling you, what this assignment is telling you, I'm putting it in the chat window also, I'll include it in the notes also. So what this assignment is telling, it says UI is built and given to the students already. So there will be the link to the UI. Yeah, this is the GUI. See, this code is already given to the students, that you take this code, UI is ready, but you should complete the functionality behind it. Let me save this UI and show you. Oops, autocomplete. Java. Okay. If I go and run Java C autocomplete, I saved it here only, right? dir. Yeah, did I get autocomplete here? Yeah, autocomplete. Sorry, it came as HTML file. Let me copy this code, autocomplete GUI.java. I'm putting that entire code here. Now, if I just go and do Java C autocomplete GUI.java. Okay, this additional thing came from somewhere. Let me just find and remove that. Yeah, this first line should not be there. It is not code. Java C. There are a lot of errors, so maybe we need more files for this. So ideally, the crux of this is this UI is given to you. So if we are able to successfully compile this, then you will be able to see this UI where search query, this box is given, this button is given, and this assignment says take this UI code, and it also gives you a file with cities file. Each city and frequency is given. So it's, you can say Shanghai, this is the frequency, this is the frequency of this. How many, what is the importance of this word? So that when you start typing SH, is starting with SH, many cities will be there. So using this data, you can prioritize. So this assignment is telling you that complete this assignment so that when we start typing AL, so you should show all the options, all the city names that start with AL, and they should be sorted based on their frequency. So the ranking is also there in the picture. Right now, even if this person's UI doesn't work for you, what you can essentially do is you can create this UI pretty quickly in Netbeans, right? Do you all agree? Like putting up this UI together is just a 5-minute thing now, right? And if you ask me, new JFrame form, and I'll call it auto suggest, enter, empty frame came. First it said search query, that will be a label. Just let me put that. This is search query. I have edited the text. Then it is a text box. There is a J text box here somewhere. Text field is there. So let me bring that here. Make it a little bigger. Right click, edit text, remove the text it has. So this came as this search box. Then there is a search Google button. So let me make form bigger. Get a button here. So this we will say right click, edit text, search Google. So button is also into picture. Next, it says show weights. So you can get a checkbox. So checkbox is here. Let's drag that here, right click, edit text, show weights. And last thing that it shows is this is nothing but a list. And this list will appear at runtime. So right now I'm dragging a list here. We will actually programmatically, we will hide it. We'll show only when we are showing the results to the user. So it is all about just UI elements on the screen to make your UI ready. So basic UI that we require for this application will be this. So even if that person's code doesn't compile for us, this is the beginner's UI we have put. Right click, run it, and you see that this UI is ready. Now, by default, we should keep it hidden. So right click, properties. There should be some option to make it hidden. So do you see any visible property? TUV. Show or hide property. So there should be some property we can search for, and using which we will initially hide it. There should be this thing like a checkbox, focus. So there are checkboxes here. I'm just quickly scrolling through. Yeah. Okay, if not here, drag enabled. What I'll do is whenever our program runs, certainly constructor of our class will be invoked. This is constructor. And what is the name of this? Right click, change variable name. This variable is JList1. I can go with JList1. I can simply say JList1 dot set visible false. Initially, I'm making it false. So whenever we start, don't show it. When user types something, that is where we should show it. So see, now if I run it, we will not see the list. Okay, we have to somehow disable its border also. Right now, border is left behind. But what we will do whenever user starts typing, that is when we should show it. So I can go ahead and say, right click on this text box, go to events. For typing, I'll go to key related events. Whenever key is pressed, the first key is pressed. Here I will say JList1 dot set visible to be true. So see, now when user types the first key, I'll start showing it, and then I have to put the text also in that. You see now the list came, right? So this is how you typically go about it. So UI should not be your time waster, but your logic behind that, and that is what you are anyways learning in DSLGO. So ideally you can build any small application. So it will help you kind of have good exposure on applying some OOPS concepts also. Okay. So Vaishnavi asking, can search be on any substring that may not be in the beginning? So Vaishnavi, this assignment that you are seeing right now, it's Princeton assignment, it is mainly on auto completion. So auto completion always says, give me everything that starts with this. But if you want to build an application, it can be anywhere. So ideally, you can change the problem statement. Yes. So you can say if I type a TIE also, then it should show all the words which contain TIE. Yeah, that will be a different problem statement, but certainly you can build search engine kind of that kind of search engine also. Right. And these kind of projects, when you do with a huge data, people put them in their resume as like we have built a small search engine which works with 1 lakh words or 2 lakh words, and all these files, all these dictionaries you can easily get online. And this assignment, reason I mentioned this to you is because see, this contains 10,000 most commonly used words in Project Gutenberg. cities list contain 93,827 cities with their weights equal to their population. Sorry, I was saying frequency. This is population. According to their population, their weights is given. So once you know these concepts, you can build any small application with UI. That is what the crux of this is. Right, so we'll stop here today. We'll do one more last class on this where we can kind of conclude our mini paint application. Till then, I will say go give it a try yourself. Try to build, try to play around with it. If you can build that yourself, that will be amazing accomplishment. Right, so yes, so certain more links I have put in this notes which will be shared with you. Any questions from anyone? Okay, perfect. So no, so let's quickly summarize and end the class. So summary of today's class, if I say, we started with getters and setters, right? Then we talked about two concepts of polymorphism, which were, what is dynamic polymorphism? What is another word for dynamic polymorphism? Overloading, right? So dynamic polymorphism is overloading. Yes, please correct me if I am saying wrong. Yeah, dynamic is not overloading. This is overriding. Yeah, I'm just checking if you are still awake. And static polymorphism is overloading. And now we are able to differentiate between these two. That should be the learning from this. Third thing that we talked about is we covered Netbeans IDE to create UI. So it makes our life simple. It auto generates UI code. It auto generates event handlers. We can focus on writing our logic for application. And then I showed you one more thing as Princeton assignment on autocomplete. Right, so this is the crux. So we will meet one more time to conclude, to wind up all OOPS concepts and complete mini paint. So I would prefer that session to be you driven rather than me driven. So mainly you give it a try to build your application and come back with your doubts and wherever you have struggled. So first half an hour we will talk about what you have tried, what you have done, and then we will talk about like how to address those issues and how to make your paint up and running. Right, so thank you so much for sparing time. For next class, we'll have a discussion. So your college management will intimate you about when we are going to have next discussion. Right. Okay, thanks guys. Then we'll be closing the session here. Okay, thank you everyone.